The champagne cork hit the ceiling tile and bounced off the fluorescent light fixture. Everyone cheered. Marketing folks were taking selfies. Sales guys were slapping each other on the back like we'd just won the Super Bowl instead of hitting some traffic numbers on a computer screen. I'm Jason Mitchell, 46 years old, and I built that system they were celebrating. Every line of code, every database connection, every report that was now showing 250% above projected usage. I'd been at this company for 12 years, working my way up from junior developer to senior systems architect. Before that, I put in 7 years at 2 other firms, learning the ropes and building the kind of experience you can't get from boot camps or YouTube tutorials. The analytics platform humming away in the background, that was mine. 2 years of nights and weekends fixing what the previous contractor had screwed up. But standing there watching Brian Hayes, our VP of Technology, give himself a pat on the back for leading this transformational project, I already knew something was wrong. Brian was 43, hired from outside 8 months ago with a bunch of buzzwords and zero understanding of how our legacy systems actually worked. The kind of guy who asked me once if we could just move everything to the cloud like it was dragging files to a different folder. The numbers on the wall monitor kept climbing. API response times under 200 millis, zero downtime for 6 weeks straight. Cross-department reporting that used to take 3 days now delivered in real time. Customer dashboards that had been crashing twice a week were rock solid. The sales team could finally see their pipeline in real time instead of waiting for Monday morning reports that were already outdated. I wasn't looking for a parade, just the $35,000 performance bonus that was spelled out in my employment agreement when they asked me to take on this project. At 46, with a mortgage and 2 kids thinking about college, that bonus wasn't just nice to have money. It was going to fund my daughter's sophomore year and maybe let me fix the transmission in my truck without touching the retirement account. That's when Brian walked over with his coffee and that fake smile he wore when he had to deal with us technical resources. He clapped me on the shoulder like I was his old college buddy. "Hey Jason, quick thing," he said, not looking at me. "Your bonus isn't going through this cycle. Policy stuff, you understand." I blinked. Policy? Yeah, upper management is tightening up on post-launch incentives, budget constraints, you know how it is. Nothing personal, just business. He was already turning away like the conversation was over. Nothing personal. Right. Like the 60-hour weeks weren't personal. Like missing my son's baseball games to fix database failures wasn't personal. Like the clause I'd negotiated into our software licensing agreement wasn't personal. Like rebuilding their entire data infrastructure from scratch wasn't personal. I just nodded and said, "Got it." What I really got was this. They thought I was just another IT guy who'd keep showing up no matter how they treated me. At 46, I'd seen enough companies pull this move. Promise the world during crunch time, then find reasons why the promises don't count afterward. They figured I'd grumble quietly and keep maintaining their systems because that's what technical people do. They figured wrong. See, 2 years ago, when we were negotiating the analytics software license, Brian had dropped the ball completely. Vendor meetings, contract reviews, technical specifications, he was supposed to handle all of it. Instead, he was busy strategizing with consultants about digital transformation roadmaps, so I stepped in. Had to. The project was going to die otherwise. I spent 2 weeks on calls with their legal team, going through every line of that contract. The software cost $180,000 annually, plus implementation fees plus support costs. For a company our size, it was a significant investment. And I made sure to include one very specific clause in Appendix D, Section 3, Paragraph B. Simple language that any lawyer would understand. In the event that the designated technical lead is removed from compensated employment status for any period exceeding 96 hours, this license agreement shall be considered null and void. The vendor's compliance team loved it. They'd been burned before by companies that would negotiate deals with key technical people, then fire those people and try to use the software anyway. Software licensing in the enterprise world isn't like buying a program for your home computer. It's about ongoing relationships, support agreements, and making sure the people who know how to use the tools properly are still around. So they made it standard language for all their enterprise contracts. Big companies can't just buy software and forget about it. Someone has to maintain it, understand it, and make sure it keeps working when things go wrong. I was that designated technical lead. My name was right there in the contract, black and white. Brian had signed off on it without reading it. Of course he had. In his world, contracts were just paperwork that lawyers handled. He probably figured if there were any important details, someone would have highlighted them for him. Now, standing in that break room, listening to him explain policy, I realized they'd just pulled the pin on their own grenade. All I had to do was let the timer run down. I didn't storm out, didn't make a scene, just went back to my desk and kept working like nothing had happened. answered emails about system performance, walked the new DevOps guy through the monitoring dashboards, helped Scott Turner troubleshoot an API endpoint that was throwing weird errors. Just another day at the office, except for the ticking clock in my head counting down to 96 hours. The thing about being 46 and having 19 years in this business is you learn patience. Not the kind of patience where you just accept getting screwed over, but the strategic kind. The kind where you understand that rushing into a fight usually means losing it. That afternoon, I opened my secure folder and pulled up the license agreement. All 47 pages of it. Read through that clause one more time just to make sure I remembered it right. There it was, clear as day in legal language that couldn't be misinterpreted. Then I opened a new email to Amanda Walsh, our chief legal counsel. Amanda was sharp, maybe 44 years old, the kind of lawyer who actually understood technology contracts instead of just pushing papers around. She'd been with the company for 6 years and had saved us from more legal headaches than anyone knew about. Subject line, FYI, potential compliance issue. Hi, Amanda. Just wanted to loop you in on the analytics licensing agreement, specifically Appendix D, Section 3. There may be compliance implications if current compensation structure isn't aligned with contract terms. Attaching the full agreement for your review. Let me know if you need any clarification on the technical aspects. I attached the PDF and hit send. Then I leaned back in my chair and waited. See, the beautiful thing about this clause wasn't that it was hidden or sneaky. It was right there in plain English for anyone who bothered to read the contract. But in a 47-page licensing agreement full of whereas-es and heretofore-s, most people's eyes just glazed over by page 3. They'd skip to the pricing section, make sure the payment terms looked right, and call it done. Not Amanda's eyes. She was the type who read everything, understood the implications, and asked the right questions. Unlike Brian, who treated contracts like restaurant menus, just scan for the price and assume everything else is standard. The email came back 2 hours later, short and to the point. Can we talk? Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office. I spent that evening at home helping my daughter with her calculus homework, trying to act normal while my mind ran through scenarios. My wife asked if everything was okay at work, said I seemed distracted. I told her just some contract stuff to sort out, nothing major. No point in worrying her until I knew how this was going to play out. The next morning, I knocked on Amanda's office door at exactly 9 a.m. She had the contract open on her laptop, that specific clause highlighted in yellow, and a legal pad covered with handwritten notes. Jason, walk me through this, she said, getting straight to business. This clause about the designated technical lead, that's you, correct? That's correct. And according to this, if you're not in compensated employment status, the license becomes void? Also correct. She was quiet for a moment, scrolling through her notes. I could see she'd been busy since yesterday, probably researching precedent cases, checking with the vendor's legal department, making sure she understood the full implications. Your Q2 bonus was supposed to process last Friday, wasn't it? It was. Part of my employment agreement when I took on the analytics project. And Brian told you it's being held up due to policy changes? I nodded. His exact words were policy stuff, you understand. Amanda closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. The look on her face told me she'd already worked out the math. We have a problem, she said. I didn't say anything. Let her work through it out loud. If you're not compensated according to your employment agreement, you're technically not in good standing under this contract. Which means... She trailed off, staring at the wall behind my head like she was reading something written there. Which means we're operating the analytics platform without a valid license, I finished. She picked up her phone and dialed Brian's extension. Brian? Amanda Walsh. I need you in my office right now. It's about the analytics licensing. Yes, now. While we waited, she asked me to walk her through exactly which systems depended on the analytics platform. I pulled out my phone and opened the documentation I'd been keeping updated. Customer dashboards, sales reporting, financial reconciliation, inventory management, HR analytics, marketing attribution, and the executive dashboard that feeds into the board presentations, I said. Amanda stopped writing. All of that runs through the analytics platform? All of it. It's the central nervous system for our data operations. Without it, we're basically flying blind. And the next board meeting is when? Thursday. 3 days from now. Jesus, she muttered, then caught herself. Sorry, this is bigger than I thought. Brian showed up 10 minutes later with that same fake confidence he always wore, like he was doing everyone a favor just by existing. Amanda didn't waste time with small talk. Did you authorize the delay of Jason's Q2 bonus? Amanda asked, before Brian even had a chance to sit down. Yeah, we're reviewing the whole incentive structure. making sure everything aligns with our new fiscal policies. Brian settled into the chair across from her desk like he was about to discuss the weather. What new policies? Brian shifted slightly. Well, we're still finalizing them, but the general direction is to be more selective about post-launch bonuses. We want to make sure we're rewarding sustained performance, not just one-time achievements. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was thinking about all those sustained performances he'd never bothered to notice, like the time I worked through Christmas break to fix a critical data corruption issue, or when I spent my vacation days training the new hires because HR couldn't find budget for proper onboarding. Amanda turned her laptop around so Brian could see the screen. Read this clause. I watched his face as he read it, the same sequence I'd seen 100 times over the years when managers finally realized they'd signed something they didn't understand. Confusion first, like he was reading a foreign language. Then understanding as the words started to make sense. Then something that looked like panic as the implications hit him. This is just standard boilerplate language, right? His voice had lost that confident edge. No, Amanda said calmly. It's not. And it's enforceable. I checked with the vendor this morning. The room went quiet except for the hum of Amanda's computer fan. Brian was looking back and forth between Amanda and me like he was trying to figure out if this was some kind of elaborate joke, like maybe we'd all have a good laugh about it and move on to discussing the quarterly budget. So what does that mean exactly? Amanda leaned forwards, her voice taking on that precise tone lawyers use when they're about to explain why someone is in serious trouble. It means that as of last Friday at 5 p.m., we've been operating our analytics platform without a valid software license. Every report, every dashboard, every piece of data we've pulled from that system is technically illegal use. But we paid for the software. We paid for the right to use it under specific conditions. One of those conditions is that Jason remains in compensated employment status. He's not. Not according to his employment agreement. I could see the wheels turning in Brian's head, trying to find a way out of this. At 46, I'd seen enough managers in crisis mode to recognize the look. They always went through the same stages: denial, bargaining, anger, and finally acceptance. Brian was still in denial. Well, can't we just process his bonus retroactively? Problem solved, right? Amanda shook her head. That's not how contracts work, Brian. The breach has already occurred. We need to remedy it and then negotiate reinstatement with the vendor. This isn't a simple paperwork fix. Negotiate reinstatement? What do you mean? I mean, the vendor's compliance team is going to want explanations, documentation, and assurances that this won't happen again. They're not just going to flip a switch and pretend nothing happened. Brian looked at me directly for the first time since this whole thing started. Jason, you knew about this clause when you said the bonus could wait, right? I mean, you could have mentioned the licensing implications. I kept my voice level and professional. Brian, I told you this bonus was part of my employment agreement when you first brought up delaying it. You said it was just a policy thing that would be resolved quickly, but you could have mentioned the licensing issue specifically. I could have, I agreed. But you're the VP of technology. I figured you'd read the contracts you sign, especially for a $180,000 annual software license. Amanda cleared her throat to get us back on track. Gentlemen, we need to focus on solutions. Brian, I need Jason's bonus processed immediately. Full amount, no delays, no further review. Fine, I'll call payroll right now. And, Amanda continued, we need to contact the vendor's compliance team to discuss reinstatement terms. That's when Brian's face really went pale. Reinstatement terms? Like what kind of terms? They're not required to just turn our access back on, Brian. This is a material breach of contract. They have every right to terminate the entire agreement and make us go through the procurement process again. Or they might require penalty payments, additional compliance measures, maybe even executive guarantees that this won't happen again. Amanda was already opening her email application. Jason, I'm going to need you to document the technical dependencies. What systems will be affected if we lose access to the analytics platform entirely? I pulled out my phone and opened the notes I'd been keeping updated. It was part of my job to understand system dependencies, but I'd been extra thorough lately. Call it a professional habit. Customer dashboards for our top 50 accounts, all sales reporting including pipeline forecasting, financial reconciliation that feeds into our monthly close process, inventory management for the warehouse operations, HR analytics for headcount planning, marketing attribution that drives our advertising spend decisions, and the executive dashboard that Ryan presents to the board. Amanda stopped typing and looked up. All of that runs through the analytics platform? All of it. When I rebuilt the system 2 years ago, the goal was to create a centralized data hub. Everything flows through it now. It's more efficient than the old system where every department had their own databases and reports. She turned to Brian. How long until the next board meeting? Thursday, 3 days from now. And the quarterly investor call? Next Monday. Ryan's supposed to present the performance metrics that show our operational improvements. Amanda closed her laptop and stood up. I need to brief Ryan immediately. Brian tried one more time.
Look, this is all technically correct, but surely we can work something out without involving the CEO. Jason, you're a reasonable guy. You don't want to hurt the company over what's essentially a paperwork issue. I stood up and looked at him. Really looked at him. At 46, I'd learned to pick my battles carefully. This wasn't about being vindictive or petty. This was about professional respect and honoring commitments. Brian, you just called 2 years of work and a $35,000 employment commitment a paperwork issue. You decided my bonus wasn't worth your time to approve. Now you're asking me to be reasonable? I'm just saying we can handle this quietly between us professionals. No, I said. We can't. Because in about 6 hours, the vendor's automated compliance system is going to flag our usage as unauthorized, and every single dashboard in this company is going to go dark. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Brian? That paperwork issue you mentioned? It generates about $2.8 million in operational efficiency annually, just so you know what you're calling paperwork. The next morning I came in to find my inbox flooded with automated alerts. The vendor's compliance system had done exactly what I'd predicted. Every executive dashboard, every sales report, every piece of analytics infrastructure was showing the same message. License verification failed. System access suspended pending compliance review. Brian was already in damage control mode, running between meetings like a man trying to put out fires with a squirt gun. Amanda was on back-to-back calls with the vendor's legal team. And somewhere in the executive conference room, Ryan Coleman was asking questions that nobody wanted to answer. Around 10 a.m., Scott Turner stopped by my desk. Scott was a good kid, maybe 28 years old, one of the DevOps engineers I'd been mentoring. He looked confused and a little panicked. Hey, Jason, any idea when the analytics will be back up? Sales is freaking out because they can't see the pipeline numbers, and marketing says their attribution reports are completely blank. Talk to Brian, I said. It's a policy issue. The vendor's compliance team was thorough. I'll give them that. They wanted documentation of the breach, a complete remediation plan, and financial assurances that it wouldn't happen again. They also wanted to speak directly with me, since I was the designated technical lead named in the contract. That conversation happened around 2 p.m. Patricia Campbell, the vendor's compliance officer, had obviously done her homework before calling. Mr. Mitchell, we've reviewed the circumstances of this breach. Can you confirm that your compensation was withheld without cause? That's correct. My Q2 performance bonus was delayed indefinitely, despite meeting all the criteria outlined in my employment agreement, and that this withholding directly triggered the license suspension clause in Section 3? Also correct. There was a pause. I could hear her typing in the background. Mr. Mitchell, I have to ask, did you anticipate this outcome when you negotiated that clause 2 years ago? I thought about that for a moment. At 46, I'd learned to be honest about my motivations, especially in legal matters. Patricia, I've been doing this work for 19 years. I've seen companies promise the world during contract negotiations, then treat their technical people like disposable parts afterward. That clause was insurance. I hoped I'd never need to use it. I see. And are you satisfied with how your company has handled this situation? I'm satisfied that contracts should be honored. Both sides signed that agreement in good faith. When one side decides terms are negotiable after the fact, it creates problems for everyone. Another pause. We'll need a formal remediation proposal from your legal team, including the specific terms for reinstatement. This isn't something we can resolve with a simple phone call. The proposal took 2 days to put together. Amanda worked with Ryan to draft something that would satisfy the vendor's compliance requirements. I heard through the office grapevine that there were some heated discussions about whether to include me in future decision-making processes. Apparently, some people thought I'd been too aggressive in protecting my own interests. The final proposal arrived on my desk for review before submission. Amanda had done her homework. Immediate processing of all withheld compensation, a formal acknowledgement of my role as technical lead, and a commitment that any future changes to my employment status would require legal review. Standard stuff that should have been happening anyway. The financial terms were less standard.
The vendor wanted a reinstatement fee of $85,000 to cover their compliance costs and administrative overhead, plus the $35,000 bonus they should have paid me in the first place, plus a $20,000 consulting fee for the time I'd spent documenting the breach and working with their compliance team. $140,000 total to fix what should have been a simple bonus payment. Ryan signed everything without complaint. I heard later that he'd had some choice words for Brian about the importance of reading contracts before signing them. Brian lasted another 3 months before he took a new opportunity at a startup. His replacement, Jennifer Walsh, actually has a technical background and reads the documents she signs. She also asked me to review all our other software contracts to make sure we didn't have any similar time bombs waiting to go off. Turns out we had 3 more contracts with similar clauses. Nothing as dramatic as the analytics platform, but enough to cause real problems if people weren't treated properly. Jennifer made sure HR understood the implications. The best part? That clause is still in our licensing agreement. Amanda made sure it got added to all our other critical software contracts too. She calls it the Mitchell Clause in her internal documentation. Sometimes I get emails from other companies asking about licensing best practices. Word gets around in the industry when something like this happens. I always tell them the same thing. Read your contracts, respect your technical people, and remember that the guy who builds your systems probably knows more about keeping them running than you think. The analytics platform is still humming along, by the way. Real-time dashboards, zero downtime, exactly like it was designed to do. Turns out when you pay people fairly and honor your agreements, things tend to work pretty well. I got a call from a recruiter last week asking if I was interested in a VP position at another company. Good money, stock options, full technical authority over infrastructure decisions. I told her I'd think about it. But honestly, I kind of like it here now. Jennifer values experience and actually listens when I explain why certain technical decisions matter. Amazing how much more pleasant work becomes when people actually read the contracts they sign and honor the commitments they make. At 46, I've learned that respect isn't given, it's earned. But once you earn it, you shouldn't have to keep proving you deserve it.